Hello, welcome to Bien's discursive program where we try to explore the general theme of the coming textile biennial from various perspectives. As you probably already know, the theme of Bien 2025 is the air. My name is Zala Oro. I'm a founder and artistic director of Bien Biennial, and today I will be joined by Klara Debeljak, a researcher and artist based in Ljubljana, working at the intersection of writing, design, and video art. She will present us with the Eater's story. Her story functions as a text that supports the biennial's theme. She also curated today's program of lectures, so thank you, Klara. After her, we will meet Professor Robert Brus from the Department of Forestry and Renewable Forest Resources at University of Ljubljana. He will present us the symbolism and beauty of trees. Rust Never Sleeps, Transformative Potentials of Corrosion is the lecture which will be held by Dagmar, Bosma, artist, writer, and cultural programmer based in Amsterdam, currently exploring the transient movements of ruination. Also from Amsterdam, we will be joined by Francisca Diacoman with her lecture To Fall Ascending. Francisca is a Chilean artist from the Palestinian diaspora exploring fragmented diasporic memories. What is this thing that we call a cloud? A lecture by Elise Misao-Hanchak will end today's program. Elise is an independent researcher, editor, and educator based between Berlin and Milan. Her transdisciplinary practice brings together architecture, landscape architecture, ecology, and media studies. So Bien is a textile biennial, but we like to think interdisciplinary. We are relatively young biennial, as next edition is our third. Nevertheless, we are very much heritage-based and understand our local surroundings as vital. Our main motivation to bring contemporary art to 5 relatively small urban centers of West and North Slovenia stems from the following, and I think I can call it a very simple idea. We try to give local audiences contemporary art in a medium that they best understand, because textiles are deeply rooted in our past and in our heritage. Next year's edition will be held in Kranj, Jesenice, Nova Gorica, Idrija, and Škofja Loka. But we also grow, we expand from our local centers globally, as textiles are the medium of many, if not of all. We are in contact with textiles every day. And same goes to the air. We traverse cultural textile landscapes, confront the essence of breath, enter the void, and allow art to become an agent of environmental awakening. We do that in various forms. At the biennial, we showcase textile art and textiles in art, as well as present the effects of textile creation through workshops, community events, residencies, and performances. I warmly welcome all to respond to our open call. The application deadline is March the 1st, 2025. And I would also like to greet all the students from textile art and design departments from universities from all around. Our 2 main partners of the biennial are the Department of Textile Art from University of Ljubljana and the Faculty of Design, the independent higher educational institutions. So I thank them also both for bringing the interest of Bien to all the students. So let's begin with our lectures. Klara, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one moment to share my screen. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for the presentation, Sala. Yeah, so my name is Klara Debeljak. I'm just going to start with reading my this essay I wrote to sort of frame the topic of air that's going to be guiding us throughout this series of lectures, and also will be the sort of theme for the open call that concludes in 2025. So I'll just get right into it. So the first time I learned that ether means the upper, pure, bright air, it was a sharp blue autumn afternoon, and there were flocks of giant birds flying overhead. A stranger pointed up, saying, "Never forget to keep your eyes on the ether." From that moment on, I connected ether with crisp air, clear skies, and magic. Although, as indicated by the by the changing weather, ether is never just one thing. It takes many forms and dictates transformation itself. In medieval science, ether is the fifth element, a substance that fills all space and makes up all bodies. Approximately 100 years ago, an archaeologist found detailed illustrations of air on ancient Egyptian tombs. The paintings and carvings depicted the god of air, whom the Greeks called Ether. He was holding up the goddess of the sky, her long body folding over him, touching the earth on either side. Despite his many variations, Ether was depicted as solid, his form associated with the mind, truth, intelligence, and balance. The characteristics of air across cultures have been order and stability, a calming and cooling influence that counters chaos. Although you might not make the connection at first, air and chaos are closely related, competing with each other like brothers. Indeed, in Greek mythology, Ether is the younger brother of chaos, both the children of Kronos, time, the father of impermanence. For us mortals, the most significant way that time and ether interlace is through breathing, a process engaged in by nearly all organisms in order to stay alive. In early Hindu philosophy, the breath, the body's essential air and energy, is called prana, the breath of life, the vital force. The act of breathing can be felt spiritually as the rhythmic tuning in with the beat of the universe, a conduit for taking in the greater world and offering up in moments of exchange. The spaces that naturally encourage breathing and union with air are forests, often referred to as the lungs of the earth. Forests filtering clean air, producing oxygen, and enriching the air with organic compounds that boost the immune system and reduce stress. Across the Western world, people desperately adopt ancient philosophies and attempt to connect with their prana, savoring breath work and yoga practices as a way to feel one in the spiraling loops of time. The search for the spiritual significance of air and breath expands as we witness our world descend into chaos and climate collapse. As the lungs of the world are being destroyed and turned into monocultures for profit, our cities sink into permanent red-gray smog, and the mating and flying patterns of birds have become disrupted and blocked. Scientists frantically measure air quality and its degradation, and astronomers observe the disappearing stars, hidden by the light pollution caused by sprawling populations. Conspiracy theorists tip their head up to the sky and track irregularities in cloud and air formations. Since air is the vital life force, symbolized by balance, but also change, the worsening conditions in our atmosphere and the collapse of air quality cause a slow disintegration of ether's stable presence, bringing disorder and heavy fog. We must never forget that as much as air brings life, it can also take it away. A single air bubble in your blood is fatal, and 1 in 10 deaths globally is the consequence of air pollution. Even if air quality had never been degraded to the degree it is now, the presence of air alongside moisture and time has always been responsible for transformation reminding us of our impermanence. In essence, air breaks down materials into their most basic form, causing mold, rot, rust, and metamorphosis, reminding us that nothing stays static. I dreamt of a bird so huge it blocked out the sky, stirring up storms with its wings, sweeping away the particles of dust, ash, and trash. The giant bird cleared new space and convinced Ether back into his solid stance, suggested he lean against the goddess of the sky for support, and together they whispered to chaos and calmed him down. The giant bird gave us humans no choice but to adapt. The bird soared overhead, dropping tiny seeds into hidden corners, and coaxed the earth to invite the forest back. It wasn't the same as before, it was something else, a new phase of decay and transmutation, one in which the gods stood shoulder to shoulder and eye to eye. Mortals grew into the air with tenderness, because if ever there was a time to dream, it is now. So thank you for listening. That was this essay. In the rest of this presentation, I want to deal with a certain sort of aspect of air that I hadn't really gone into in the essay, which is the politicization of air and the atmosphere, and then sonic practices that are a reaction to that. So we did talk about how air symbolizes balance a lot, but it also symbolizes transformation. And I think that really wasn't emphasized enough. But yeah, so it's also something to say that like a lot of these effects that I was mentioning, like monocultures and pollution and smog, are obviously effects of late stage capitalism. And this is happening within a wider geopolitical context of, wars over land, resources, identity, and ultimately airspace. So that's why I'm going to talk about this one artist that was really inspirational to me called Lawrence Abu Hamdan. And I actually just encountered him recently, or his work, in December 2023 in the Schinkel Pavilion in Berlin. This was part of an exhibition called The Assault of the Present on the Rest of Time, Artistic Testimonies of War and Repression. And basically, Lawrence Abu Hamdan is an artist working with the politics of sound and silence, and he considers himself a private ear. The exhibition was, you had to sort of sit in these bean bags with a really high quality surround system, looking up to the screen that was on the ceiling. And what was displayed was a video essay of his that was basically a series of recordings that he had taken on his own in the last few years. Lawrence Abu Hamdan is a Lebanese British artist, and he's based in Beirut. So a lot of his work is investigating the surveillance and sonic intimidation methods that the Israeli army uses above Lebanese land with unarmed self-flying vehicles and other military planes and drones. So he has recorded over 400 videos of Israeli fighter planes and drones over the last years. He's been recording since 2007, tracking the different vehicles flying over the Lebanese airspace. And he also was basically started this a really cool website called airpressure.info, where he also as just civilians can also use a hashtag to upload their own observations and footage. And these invasive acts are not short flyovers, but rather last on average of 4 hours and 35 minutes. He's been tracking this stuff since 2007, and he's calculated that there's been 8.5 years of jets and drones continuously occupying the sky. So 8.5 years of jets and drones occupying the sky since 2007. So these are just some screenshots from this website called airpressure.info. And these are screenshots from a YouTube video about his practice, which I recommend you also watch. So yeah, as he says, that drones flying over Lebanon have created a kind of acoustic fearscape for people living in Lebanon. So he also investigates like the way that this acoustic intimidation is used, like how it correlates with cardiovascular diseases or psychological PTSD and other types of trauma and disorders. It's a work about how you turn the air violent, he says, and also a kind of cartography of pressure, which means war in the atmosphere. And war in the atmosphere is also the hashtag in Arabic that is used for civilians to upload their footage to the website of air pressure. And interestingly enough, actually, after he publishes this website, the Lebanese government got in touch with him and were like, that's incredibly impressive. In fact, even they don't have such a detailed overview of the types of vehicles, the duration of time, and the kind of after effects that are left in the people under the politicized sky, let's say. So this is a website that he started in 2023 called Earshot. And this is also why he considers himself a private ear, because actually he does, with his art and research, he collaborates very often with institutions such as UK asylum and immigration courts, Amnesty International, Child Protection International, and also works together with a institute in England called Forensic Architecture. And I just brought up this image, it's just a screenshot from the Earshot website or NGO, because we can see here some of like the methods that he and his team use to investigate different injustices. Yeah, as you can see, sonic investigation for communities affected by corporate, state, and environmental injustice. So audio ballistics, ear witness testimony, eco-acoustic investigation, sonic profiling, sound authentications, spectral enhancement, speech analysis. So there's many ways that, the air and audio and sonic practices can be also, used in a way that transcends purely like artistic projects. Here we have featured investigations, and one part of the featured investigation is also this air pressure website that we spoke about earlier. So the only major study into the presence of Israeli military aircraft in Lebanese airspace. Yeah, and then if you go on, you can see more on this airpressure.info. So yeah, a really interesting and important way of thinking about airspace and studying airspace and working with ecoacoustic investigations and sonic profiling. So as he says that after publishing this Earshot and the air pressure website, there's been a greater awareness of why sound matters. And I actually have noticed that myself somehow in a variety of different spaces. What he also says is like why he started being interested in like sonic warfare or the politics of sound and silence was because of his background in music. Seeing it as a political act to bring together communities, and showed him how organizing around sound can bring together communities. That's why the next artist that I would like to represent is this Mukata, whom I actually also invited to give a lecture here, but he wasn't interested. But yeah, Mukata is a Palestinian sound producer and sound artist, and this is just some screenshots from an interview on the reality of sound and fiction of borders. I thought that was pretty cool because actually this Lawrence Abu Hamdan also talks about the sort of fictionality of borders, but the very real effects that sound and acoustic like warfare can have on the populations subjected to it. I just took some screenshots from this interview because I think it's kind of interesting how he talks about archiving a lot of vinyls, digitalizing basically these vinyls that were being destroyed, a music and a culture being basically erased through the destruction of like sonic traditions. Then here he also talks about, basically he takes a lot of like samples from Israeli checkpoints and just different aspects of the reality of living in an apartheid state, and then makes music with this. So here he says, you know, yeah, you try to make music, electricity gets cut off. Something is always kind of blocking the continuity of my reality, which I represent through sound. So I thought that was somehow such a beautiful sentence. I don't know if you can even see it because it's like the last line. But anyway, I thought it also had to do somehow with the definition of his name, Mukata, meaning disconnection, cutting off, separation, detachment, boycott, strike, being disunited, estranged. So here, yeah, here he also talks about these sonic booms when the planes travel faster than the speed of sound for a few seconds and create the sound of an explosion. So talking about the psychological warfare. And basically he integrates a lot of these experiences and samples into the work that he does, which I think is a really essential type of analyzing air as well and integrating to sort of significant cultural outputs that are also really important for preserving the culture, history, and identity that he's from. Okay, so now I'll go on to this is kind of my project, but it's a bit of a failed project. So this was basically an illustration of a pirate radio that I proposed with my friend to do for the Dakar 2024 off Biennale, but unfortunately she couldn't join me. So I went there without the skill sets or materials to build this pirate radio. So I started like investigating like what was I going to do, trying to get people to help me, you know, and actually like technologically, I'm really not that like developed. So it was quite a challenge, although apparently building a pirate radio is not that hard, I was told. However, over time, like I basically just abandoned the project because people told me, well, let me just first of all go into this like short little text that we wrote for it, which is basically radios as being designed as a tool of control and obedience, but as the medium has always been more multifaceted and slippery than intended, offering the ability to create new and sometimes unruly publics. I think to me, this is also why like radio as a medium is kind of coming back, because we're realizing the unreliability of sort of like state infrastructures. And yeah, one of the reasons why I then, first of all, I couldn't do this project because I literally didn't know how to build a pirate radio. Second of all, some Italian dudes called me that I was interviewing because they were working with radios and representing one Italian guy who had come in the 80s, I think, and made a lot of pirate radio stations on the borders of Burkina Faso and Senegal and Mali that were really important in sort of instigating the independence movement. And the way that these pirate radios were doing this was literally by just disseminating like sort of, local discourse and music and basically connecting communities with each other. So that's why I think pirate radios are kind of making a comeback, is because people are realizing the unreliability of state infrastructure. And as we know, cyber warfare and etc. is a very prominent like mode of control. We also saw in the case of the genocide in Gaza and Palestine that like, as well as in Ukraine, there's a lot of like internet cutoffs. So often cutting off modes of communication is one way that like a population is subjugated. So yeah, through that, I met this guy, Juan Gomez, and this is like a screenshot from our WhatsApp when I was also in touch with him if he wanted to maybe talk about his project called the Lumbung Radio, which is like a massive radio that incorporates like people from a lot of all over the world basically, and it's a 24-hour radio, and they have all these like super complex time slots and stuff like this, because it's like across different time zones. And I was like, well, maybe it's a far stretch for you to represent your Lumbung radio in context of air and the topic of air. And then he was like, hey, no, actually in Mexico, the name for radio in the Zapotec language is all about air and waves. And he sent me this book called Air Not for Sale, Resistance for the Land Through the Waves. So he was like, it's really not a far stretch. Air and radio is actually also etymologically connected in certain Mexican dialects or sub-languages. Okay, or just languages. This is the cover of the book, which I think is so beautiful. And this is a recent publication that him and his Lumbung Radio Collective published. So I just included a couple of screenshots. So yeah, Juan Gomez, Lumbung Radio, if you're interested in checking him out. Waves, Radio's Collective Imagination, Digital Commenting, Transversality and the Politics of Listening, Sonic Becoming and Beyond. And here we just have like a sort of layout of the different chapters and topics that they go through. And you can actually see Lawrence's and Mukata's also interests or like specialities integrated in the way that the chapters are structured. So this digital commenting, the politics of listening, ways of listening, micropolitics of broadcasting, reactivating and archives and reclaiming history. So I do think that that's one way that we can perceive air as, also with in this more sort of like, let's say, politicized way. But that's it for my presentation for now. Thank you so much. This is a picture of my favorite cloud. And now we're going to listen to the presentation of Dr. Robert Brus, called The Symbolism and Beauty of Trees. Dr. Robert Brus is a professor at the Department of Forestry and Renewable Forest Resources, University of Ljubljana, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to him. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Klara. Maybe I first try to share my screen, right? Okay, is this okay?
Yes.
Yes. So you see the beautiful cherry trees all over the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank Klara and Zala for inviting me to this, to have this contribution in this biennial. First of all, I was a little bit skeptical how I could contribute something to these air topics. And first I thought I would speak about forests producing air and oxygen and so on. But then they said, no, this is not necessary, maybe something different and so on. So then we decided that I would present you something about the symbolic meaning of trees and the beauty of trees and how the trees can be artistic inspiration in various topics and various kinds of arts. So maybe for the beginning, I would start with the tree as a symbol. It is known that tree is one of the most important and strongest symbols since the beginning of humanity. And the images you see are, I'm sure, very much familiar to most of you. All of you probably know this Yggdrasil, which was probably the ash as an inspiration. In the Norse cosmology, this was the tree as the axis from the underground going through the earth into the skies. And also in old Persian cultures, the trees were very often the motive which was present everywhere. Also in Iraq, 870 BP, this Assyric cosmic tree can be seen practically everywhere on these old pictures. Not long ago, I was in Western France, and I was surprised how much the Celtic symbols are still present there. It's the area around Karnak, and this Celtic tree of life is one of the most used. Everywhere you can find these pictures and this shape of the trees, which meant a lot to people at that time. In India and in Eastern countries, there is also a very common motive of so-called inverted trees. That means that in the ground where the roots of the trees should be present, there is a crown with the leaves, and the roots are in the sky. So this is a very old motif, which is also found sometimes in Slovenian history, but maybe I will mention this a little bit later. The motive of a tree is also very much present in old Christian stories, like Adam and Eve are always connected to the tree. Here you see some examples how different artists used the tree, and also in Eastern religions, like from India, the chakras in the human body are symbolized or presented like the trunk of the tree is presented by human body, and then those chakras are spotted in different parts of the body. There is also a very common and often belief that the trees can heal the people and fill the people with energy. So tree hugging is a movement that is more and more often and common also in Slovenia, but all over the world as well. And some people really feel some energy coming out of the trunk and heal their traumas. A tree is also a very strong symbol in certain countries, not only in flag of many countries, but also in coats of arms and so on. The tree shape symbolizes the big strength. And down here, bottom on the right, you can also see the picture of Ashwata. This is a tree species called sacred tree or Ficus religiosa. This is the species where Buddha met his inspiration. It was this very tree species. If we go back to Slovenian connections with the trees, we can go far back to pre-Christian beliefs and pre-Christian times and religions, and tree was always the focal point, which is still presented in many praxis and many praxis, which you see some of them here, like Zeleni Yuri in Bela Krajina. Here we have ivy leaves, and then ivy man and spruce man like Bošnjanov in Smrekov, in Cerkno. This is all very old and connected to pre-Christian times. Also, this 1st of May tree, we call it Mlaj, is also connected with the symbolism of tree, not to mention Christmas tree and Pine's Visit or Borovo Pustivanje in Prekmurje. In last years, there is also a very strong movement of exploring the pre-Christian beliefs in religions in the western part of Slovenia. Probably some of you know Pavel Medvešček, who was exploring this, and he collected beautiful stories about this and published several books. And in many stories, the tree is the focal point with worshipping the nature and feeling connection with it, and so on. There is also one pre-Christian belief in Slovenia. Probably you heard this already. It's the celebration of Saint Barbara at the 4th of December. It is believed that when you cut the leaves, the twigs of the cherry tree, which has no leaves, at the 4th of December, and put them to water and inside your house, then by the Christmas you'll have blossom like this. And if this happens, this assures the happiness for the next year. So this is also the very old symbolic belief present here in Slovenia. And something similar you can find in Japan. Hanami is the sacred day in Japan. It's in March or April every year. This is the week or two that the cherry blossom is in its full, like you see here. And Japanese people respect this flowering. They enjoy, they take time, and they explore the beauty of these trees. And this Hanami flowering is also the way how Japan is promoting its politics and friendship connections all over the world. And you can find Hanami also in other parts of Europe. And this has a lot to do with the symbolic and beauty of the tree as well. So this Japanese garden can be found, gardens can be found all over the world, all over in Europe, and also we have some in Slovenia. This is one at Mozirski Gaj. But what I would like to mention here is not only the flowering of cherries in the spring in Slovenia, but also some plantations or groups which were planted in Slovenia directly as a gift from Japan. This is the center near the biotechnical faculty, not far from my department, and these 80 and something trees were given to Slovenia as a gift from Princess Sayako in 2000. And now they're flowering already in a very good shape. And then I would also like to mention, this is our department. In December 2022, there was a protocolar planting of these Japanese cherries, which were given as a gift to University of Ljubljana. They were spread around different faculties and departments. And this central planting ceremony took place here at this department. And since then, every year, we have the Hanami celebration here at this department, and also the Japanese ambassador always come and it's a very good opportunity to make connections in Japan and Japanese researchers from the university more stronger and more tight. So this is the picture how this plantation looked like this April. There was also snow. Hanami was a little bit late, but still very, very beautiful. So from this Japanese garden, we can also see the presence and the use of many other tree species, and they try to combine them in very different ways. One of them is to combine them in a very free, not very strong, not very formal form. Such example of free form you find here. And one of the main species that is used is Japanese maples called Dacer palmatum, which you see here in the use in Belgium. I could talk about many other tree species and autumn color, which are coming now in the autumn. And this is the endless inspiration for different kinds of arts. But as I said, we will just go through different topics very fast because we don't have time to go into details. But part of Japanese or Oriental shaping of trees are also these more formal shapes, which you see here. Use like Staxus that can be Japanese or European species are cut into these shapes. And this is also one of the ways of this Japanese garden design, which is also quite often used or inspired European shaping of gardens. Here is the example of the hanging gardens of Marquesac in Dordogne in France. It's very interesting to see how the French very strict shaped design was inspired and the French gardeners also admit that they were inspired also by Japanese freeforms, and the result is this beautiful, unusual garden in Marquesac. Probably some of you are aware of this or have seen it before. And this is just as an example. This is a much more formal design of the garden, but still you can see how the tree can also be used in shaping. Yes, trees can inspire many different arts. Let's say just to mention two examples how the poets in Slovenia were inspired by trees. One of them was Klara Debeljak. That was his anniversary of his birth 2 years ago. And I took this shot at the public library in Šoštanj. You see Tesh 6 behind it. But here, this Češnjev cherry blossom, Češnjev cvet, was chosen as the part of this library. Another one which always come to my mind is Srečko Kosovel. He wrote several poems which were inspired by trees. Mostly they were pines, bori, as here at this picture. And this is just to show you that trees can be a very strong inspiration in the poetry as well. Even more often, you can see trees in painting art. There, on one side, they can be drawn very realistically or symbolically, but some shapes are immortal. So this is the picture from the National Gallery of Slovenia from Franz Kaučič. He painted the ideal country with a bridge and amphitheater. And it is interesting to see which kind of trees were ideal for him. And you see here, this part, if you come closer, we see that cypresses and pine stones are those trees which are always present there in the ideal country, not just from Franz Kaučić, but also from other painters. In the Middle Ages, you see stone pine, Pinus pinea, and cypress. So this is the so-called combination of those two species. And to be honest, still wherever you see these shapes in the Mediterranean region, those pillar-like cypresses always remind people on Eden or some exotic Mediterranean garden, as well here as in Rome with this umbrella stone pine with this special shaped crowns. I think not a single painter has avoided completely the trees. Some of them have series of different tree species. Some of them can be recognized, like here, these are for sure olive trees at Van Gogh. Here are some fruit trees down on the right from Pizarro, while here at Monet, this is for sure pine. So it is not that difficult to recognize the species, but this is not important. This is not the case here. It's just what I want to show you is that the shape of the tree and the appearance of the tree itself was an inspiration. These are some examples from the Impressionists. Let's say the Cubists used it as well. At some of them, it is difficult to recognize a tree shape at all, but still it is transformed and used as the integral and very important part of the picture, like here at BRAC and Picasso. So these are some examples. Birch tree is maybe the one that is used most often. I shouldn't say it's exploited, but it's difficult to avoid, and most of the artists were attracted by them. Let's say this was a very beautiful picture. I saw this in MoMA and couldn't resist to take this picture. So the tree and the forest, it's irresistible. Of Slovenian authors, I have to mention first Richard Jakupić. He loved birches. These are just two of the paintings. I think there are more than 10, maybe 15 different paintings with birches, which are in the focus. It's not easy to recognize them, but still they were used very often. And then some of the most popular or loved or well-known pictures in Slovenia, like Grohar's Larch or this flowering apple of Grohar again, are just examples of how the trees are in focus. And again, the willows are also very often used thanks to their very interesting shapes. And also the modern artists, maybe some of you know Joni Zakonšek. Beside grasses, also the trees are her focal point. This is a very interesting exhibition that is still on, so you can come and see it at our Department of Forestry. My colleague Roman Paulin chose from his enormous collection, one of the biggest vinyl collections of Slovenia, choose several covers with trees in different forms on those covers. And this is just some examples of this. If you're interested in more than I said, you can still have a look at it in our department. I'm not a musician, but tree as a musical inspiration is a big thing. Many bands, many songs are inspired by the forest and by the trees, but in in last years I was impressed how the trees were used by Bakalina Velika. I'm sure most of you know this band. If you don't know it yet, you should Google them and listen to their songs. It's the young guys living in Chadar near Tulmin, filling these forests. They were the guys who found those 6,000 years old silver fir logs at their property, and now they are elaborating a violin, a musical instrument from the timber of this 6,000 years silver fir, which is an impressive story for me. I'm looking forward to hear the song of this violin. And as I say, this is just a small example of how the tree can inspire the musician and the composers as well, to just in short. The tree is very often used in architecture as well. So the first builders used the pillars of the buildings as the imitation of the tree trunks, which were supporting the construction, or just were used as a symbol of something big and strong and so on. So these are just examples from Luxor, tree trunk with lotus flower closed on top, or decorated with acanth leaves, and similarly in Persepolis and Delphi, and through all other civilizations and countries. Yes. Here on the top left, it's a very clever system of so-called dugong wooden brackets in China. So with this connecting systems of wooden brackets, they are imitating the tree crown. And this structure is very strong, anti-earthquake stable, and still used in China in traditional way or transformed. But this is one of the very old ways of how the building of big buildings and construction of buildings was inspired by the tree architectures. Not to mention the Gothic cathedrals. You see also here we have big tree trunks, and then we have the crowns with big branches supporting the roof and making the feeling like these structures and churches and cathedrals are much bigger and lighter for this. So these are some examples. And what I have to mention is that the imitation of the tree form is not only for aesthetic reasons. I think we all agree that this looks very beautiful, but also for construction reasons. The tree can also be 100 meters high, has a strong crown, and imitating this crown can give the solutions how to construct the buildings big like this. Also on the left side, you see again some buildings from Art Nouveau in Paris, when steel was first used for these structures. Then again, the three crowns and the structure of supporting pillars was used. If we go on, we see some other examples like these dendriform pillars from Lloyd Wright, and maybe here down on the right, you also see a petrol station at Tivolska from Milan Mihelic. This is clearly the tree shape as well. And we can go on and on. The most famous and modern architects always are looking for the inspiration and the trees. And these are some more recent and more modern examples. In Ljubljana, the trees are also important part of the building scenes, but also as the aesthetical elements that goes by the architecture. Jože Plišnik was just one of the architects that were using it. Probably he was the most well known about this. Ravnikar as well, here at the Museum of Modern Art. And you also see here how the shape of the columns and the church was imitated by those pillar Lombardy poplars at St. Jakob's church. And again, also modern architects use the tree in different forms. So this was in short. I could go on and on and on, but my time is past, so I have to stop. If there is any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you. Hello?
Okay, hello.
Yeah.
Okay, Klara is here. All good. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Klara, you're muted.
Hi. Thank you, Robert. That was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I'd just like to introduce our next speaker, whose name is Dagmar Bosma. They will introduce the lecture called Rust Never Sleeps, Transformative Potentialities of Corrosion. And Dagmar Bosma is an artist, writer, and cultural programmer based in Amsterdam, currently exploring the transing movements of ruination. So welcome, Dagmar, and I'm very excited to hear your presentation.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm just going to share my screen. My presentation is about rust and partly about how that is undoing everything that encompasses modernity, basically. I'm Dagmar. I'm an artist and writer based in Amsterdam currently. And I'm just going to walk you through some of my recent projects and try to do that quite quickly. So here I'm sharing with you some documentation of a presentation I did as part of a group show at A Till of the Tub, which is a space in Rotterdam. And the presentation is titled Scrap Metal Dream Boats. I used to live in Rotterdam and work there, and it's a harbor city. So there are a lot of industrial terrains, a lot of wastelands. And during my time there, I started to come upon and to collect and drag with me scrap metal that I found. So pieces of metal that had lost their function and had eroded, and that were kind of speaking to me because of the energy and the aura that they were carrying, and because of the process of time that you can see in these objects, basically. And I was kind of collecting these bits and pieces without a purpose. They were piling up in my studio. But I felt a desire to make some sort of composition with them. And I tried a few things. I tried welding and making sculptures, but somehow fixing these bits in such a fixed way, it didn't feel very good for me. I wanted to make a more loose assemblage. And that's when I found out about the technique of rust dyeing textile. And that's what you see here. What you see here is basically a an in-process of what rust dyeing textile looks like. So it's a very, very simple technique, actually. I didn't invent it. It's something that a lot of hobbyist moms in the US really like to do, and they have blogs about it and whatnot. And it's a very, very simple technique. Basically, what you do is you take a fabric and you soak it in water with vinegar and salt, and you wrap that around a rusted metal or metal that's not rusted. It will start to rust, because basically the process of rust is metal coming into contact with oxygen, air, and water. And the salt and the vinegar speeds up and accelerates the rusting process. So like, think of how when you're near a beach town, there's a lot of rust everywhere because of the salty water accelerating the rusting process. And in this work, as part of my presentations of Scrap Metal Dreamboat, I'm kind of showing the process of rust in real time. So the objects, the metal objects, are placed on the floor, draped with the soaked fabric. And during the time of the exhibition, the process of rust unfolds, basically. But actually, it happens very, very quickly. So within 24 hours of setting everything up, you will have a rust print. And this print is kind of almost photographic. So it's really leaving the trace of the object, as you can see. Klara, can you go to the next photo, actually? Here's an overview of the presentation in the old bathhouse space, the basement of the bathhouse. You can go to the next photo if you want. And of the body I've laid out on the floor. And if you have one more, yeah. Here you can really see how the fabric really is taking the imprint and the kind of a transfer of the shape of the metal objects. And here, I think at this point, it was there for a few, like in total, it was up for 2 months. And here it was laying for a while. And you can see that the rust is kind of starting to almost eat through the fabric, because at some point it disintegrates textile. And so rust really is quite a forceful process that really kind of disintegrates things. And a rust stain you will not get out of your clothes, etc. So it's a very slow process, one that we don't really see with the naked eye or don't really notice, but that does a lot of damage and has a lot of impact. And I'm very interested in, and that shape shifts also, because if you can go to the next photo. This is also, so I have 2 methods of rust dyeing. One of them is collecting objects that are rusted in my studio and making prints with them. But I also sometimes go out of the studio to work with existing structures, big existing structures. And this is an old hoist at Brienenoord Island. That's a place that's very integral to the development of my practice around rust. There used to be a lot of old shipyards on this island. So there's continuously washing up of scrap metal from old boats and from the shipyard. And every time I come there, I find new stuff washed up on the shores. And if you can go to the next one. Yeah, this is a little paparazzi shot of me doing my work. Basically draping, again, the fabric over an existing structure. And this implied also that I was in a timeline really with the work. So I would drape this at the end of the afternoon and then come back early in the morning to check the progress. And as I said, already after 24 hours, you can see the staining happening. Yeah, you're really kind of in a timeline with the process of rust, which I really appreciate, because I'm kind of working together with another agent, except for myself here. I'm working together with a natural process that does what it wants, and that I don't have full control over. So also the outcomes are kind of a surprise every time, and I really appreciate that, to kind of not be the sole maker in a way, and to work together with this natural process. If you can go to the next slide. These are examples of things that I found at Brine North Island. And as I was saying before, rust really changes the shape of material. And so these things here, they're barely recognizable as functional objects anymore. I really had to train my eyes also to recognize them, because a lot of them looked like stone or even bark of a tree or something like that. So I'm very interested in how corrosion really shape shifts materiality and kind of transforms these objects into something else. And even though they lose their function, they gain a sort of energy and aura to me. If you can go to the next slide. And in my thinking around this, somebody who's really, really important is the artist Elsa van Vrijdag-Loringhoven. She was a Dadaist artist. And this is a work that's very significant to me in my practice. It's called Enduring Ornament. It's from 1930, and it's a 13, and it's a found object. And I wrote an essay about this, where some quotes on the next slide are from. So I will read those for you. Her first objet trouvé, dating from 1913, was a thoroughly rusted metal ring she found while heading to the city hall for what would be her third marriage. Perhaps a half joke on the impurity of broken and reiterated vows, von Vrijdag-Loringhoven took the ring as a totem and named it Enduring Ornament. The decaying ring is a symbol of persistence, the persistence of being beyond original purpose. And underneath that, something tired of its old ways and driven to the point of exhaustion, no longer able to function as it should, we can locate a transformational potential there. So I'm interested in this moment that a thing cannot function anymore as it is designated to, and gains kind of another energy, another characteristic through this process of decay and corrosion. If you can go to the next slide. I'm also relating to this because I myself identify as a trans masculine person. And there's a lot of kind of affective overlaps here with kind of as a gendered body having prescribed function, having prescribed behaviors, and not being able to fulfill those anymore, or kind of transforming out of those prescribed ways. So I kind of feel a sort of familiarity with the process of rust in a way, in my own transness. And in a recent solo show I made called Tough and Tender at Manifold Books in Amsterdam, I was furtherly exploring this connection between corrosion, decay, and transness. And for the show, I made a series of jock straps. If you can go to the next slide. A series of jock strap sculptures made out of rust-dyed fabric and metal holders, and also with found objects combined, found scrap objects. The jockstrap, it's a homoerotic lingerie that I wear for self-affirmation of my gender. If you can go to the next one. And the jockstraps with the rust print are pointing towards this transformative process. If you can, yeah. One work that was part of the show was this document, printed out document, which is a document that that has the indication of waiting times for the gender clinic in Amsterdam. And at this point, the waiting time to get an intake is 3 to 4 years. So it's a very, very long waiting time to just get an intake. And through corroding the documents with rust water, I'm kind of making a material translation of this very slow waiting, slow process, which rust is also, you know, a very slow unfolding process, to kind of give a material translation of this duration, but also of the persistence of yourself and your identity, because even though rust, eventually something will fully disintegrate, but the material still persists. It just gets a different shape. It becomes more porous. It flakes. It kind of crumbles, but it's still there in its residue form. If you can go to the next one, please. An ongoing research I am doing currently is one that's taking place at Kunstfort Vijfhuizen, which is an old military fort close to Amsterdam, which is now defunct, and which has a lot of signs of dilapidation also. As you can see here on the right, this building was actually the first building made out of concrete in the Netherlands, and part of the building is made out of reinforced concrete. So that means that within the concrete, there's steel to enforce and strengthen the concrete. But actually, as you see on the right, what you see is a concrete, what we call concrete rot, which happens when the steel inner structure starts to corrode and makes for the surrounding concrete to crumble. So you see this actually all over this fort, and it's also a huge issue in infrastructure in general. And that's what this this research is also very much around the psychology of metal as the material of modernity. Just think about it. All our infrastructure, the built environment around us, was made possible with metal. The Industrial Revolution was made possible with metal. The development of modern warfare and all the weapons that are being sent to Israel right now are possible because of how we apply metal, a man-made material, that is an alloy made from a raw iron oxide. And the interesting thing is that our psychology around this material is one of trustworthiness and strength and power, dependability. Just think of the saying, he has an iron fist, or he has an iron will. But actually, as you can see in this photo and many examples, metal is always driving towards its own disintegration. It's always in the process of rusting, and we continuously have to halt it from going there by applying coatings, anti-corrosive coatings, or by developing new rust preventative alloys. But it's a constant process, because if we let it silently, rust is always happening. It's always falling apart. And if you can go to the next slide. One book that's really central in my research right now is this one, Rust by Jonathan Waldman, in which he's really illustrating very thoroughly the impact of corrosion on our modern society and everything that's part of that, and the kind of slowness of that. I named this talk "Rust Never Sleeps" because it's happening all the time, as I said. And in the book he writes, on a quiet night you can hear a Ford rust, but we don't really notice rust happening, right? It seems kind of not a very serious issue, something to easily ignore, something that's definitely less impactful than big natural disasters like hurricanes, etc. But as he writes in the book, rust is actually costlier than all other natural disasters combined, amounting to 3% of the GDP, or 437 billion annually. So it has a huge impact on basically everything we do, but it's one that is harder to sense, I guess, and to see, because it unfolds so slowly. And he also writes, rust represents the disordering of the modern. So I'm very interested in that, the contrast between this idea of metal as the material of modernity, the material of strength and of progress, and the actual material quality of this material being, that it's going to rust, that it's going to disintegrate, become porous, and eventually fall apart. Just to ground this a bit in the current context, I'm thinking, and in the context of the military fort that I'm working in, the weapon industry, of course, it's all built on metal as well, and depends on metal as well. And these are just some recent headlines from the Netherlands about how rust was affecting the defense system, the military system, by, for example, grounding defense aircrafts because rust was found in the tanks. So there's a big force there, and I'm not sure where this project is going to go, but I'm kind of also thinking of speculating around this potential of rust to kind of halt, to kind of stop these violent things that we are doing. Yeah, I think that's kind of my presentation. I think that's also the end of the time, but if anybody has a question, please raise them in the chat. I would love to hear your questions. Yeah, and I would love to for you to pay attention to the rust everywhere around it, because once you start to see it, you can't unsee it anymore. It's everywhere. So that's maybe a nice exercise for yourself. If you're on your next walk, pay attention to where you can find rust, and how that's also has something that has to do with oxygen and air, and our breath and everything. So that's a nice point of attention, I think, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dagmar, so much. I'm sorry about the technical things, so thank you for keeping your patience, and
thank you for bearing with me.
No, it was so worth it. It was an incredible presentation, so thank you very much. I hope you can stay in for the next one. I'll also, if anyone in the audience has questions for Dagmar later on, or you don't want to drop it in the chat now, I'm sure you can also reach out privately, probably later. Sure. And yeah, thank you again. I thought it was just really inspiring, and I love your work.
Thank you. A little bit short, and there's much more to say, but I hope it gave some insight to what I'm thinking around. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have our next guest lecture called Francisca Camis Giacoman. She'll be presenting Caer Ascendiendo, To Fall Ascending, and she's a Chilean artist from the Palestinian diaspora, currently based in Amsterdam, exploring fragmented diasporic memories in a variety of mediums. So I hope Francisca is here somewhere. But if not,
Hello. Yeah,
oh,
I'm here.
okay, perfect. Okay, so then goodbye from me and good luck with your presentation. And thank you for joining us, Francisca.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was also really nice. I had the chance to listen a bit of the presentation from Dagmar. And I mean, we live in the same city. We always run into each other, but I never had the chance to really listen to the work. So I'm happy I could actually be there.
Yeah, it was.
And thank you for inviting me to speak today. I think in the beginning I was a bit like, okay, textiles, yes, air, I don't know. And then thinking about it, it actually made a lot of sense, especially for this project that is called Caer Ascendiendo. That is the one that I will talk a little bit more about, which means to fall ascending, as Klara mentioned. That it's a project that explores the relationship from my family with the textile, how they build a family business from it, and also air in relation with oral tradition and oral storytelling as a way of resisting. I'm gonna try to be on time. I don't know. I am a bit chaotic today, so I apologize already about that. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. That started the whole project, so I'm gonna leave it here open. So as I mentioned, I receive boxes as a methodology of working that are containing objects that unfold into new research and work. And each time I get a new box, I invite some people to join me, speculate about what's inside, and we have dinner and drinks while we open the package. And we always do, I always send a video with the box, and then the invitation is also to kind of imagine what could be inside and to open the box together. So here are some photos of that moment where that box came, and then we shared dinner and we started the speculation and the opening of the box. So the box that I will be sharing, or the folder that I will be sharing with you today, looks more like it contains four main things: a photo, a name, a parachute, and a poem. And if we have time, I will also continue with like a bonus track. That is the last one. So starting with the photo, I'm gonna open this. Sorry, I'm gonna open this with preview. So this photo, this is my family in Al-Mahrur, a place that is located in Palestine in Area C of the West Bank near Bethlehem, where Israel exercises civilian and military control. The house that you see here is now in danger of being demolished by the Israeli settlers that are already building in those lands as part of the ongoing process of further settler colonial annexation of occupied Palestinian territory. My grandparents, you can see here, from both sides are coming from Palestine. Were displaced in 1948 after the Nakba, and after a long journey, they arrived to Chile, where they settled and began to build new roots. I bring this photo today because it is for me the place where all the story started. I always heard about Al Mahrour as if it was a kind of paradise, and today we cannot access that land, and what we still have to continue is the air. And then this is the first element that I wanted to share with you, that the air in my work is translated as the stories that will always keep the house alive, and in that sense, air as a medium to oral history to exist. A name, La Vive. This is my grand aunt, La Vive, that you see here. La Vive was the one who brought the knowledge from Palestine and its connection to the textiles. She, along with her sister Sofia, that you cannot see here, started hand mending clothes. And it's from their stories that I've learned most of what I know about Palestine. A few years ago, when I was already living here in the Netherlands, I asked her via my cousin, that is her granddaughter, to send WhatsApp audios and videos of her telling stories. That was previous to this video that you are seeing here. From this, I began memorizing and learning by heart the stories that she was telling and trying to repeat in the same way that she was telling things. And then with time, then we built also this setup that was made in collaboration with my cousins. Is the place that you see here is the Estadio Palestino in Santiago. So the Palestinian stadium, let's say, it's like a social club, but also a sports club in Santiago. Maybe as a bit of a context, the Palestinian diaspora in Chile is the biggest diaspora of Palestinians outside the Arab countries. So it's quite important also for the economy of the country and what they build around the textile industry. But I'm not gonna go very deep on that today. So in one of her stories, La Vive tells me, and I will recite part of it by heart in Spanish and translate later. Estaba en el dormitorio con mi hermana la Sofía Lastra. Dormíamos en una sola cama, las dos. Sacamos la sana y la colgábamos por la ventana para hacerla así, como vitrina. Puse la camisa, la enagua y el calzón. La gente salía de la vega. Ay, qué linda la enagua, qué linda la camisa. Pase nomás, señora. No sabíamos hablar más que pase nomás, señora. Y abrimos, empezamos a vender, a poco aprendimos y abrimos negocio. Basically, what she's saying in this story is that together with her sister, they used to mend clothes by hand, and then they used to put it in a kind of like a vitrine outside the place that they were sleeping. They both slept in the same bed, so they took the sheets out, they hang it from the window, and then they start hanging like a shirt, a petticoat, and they start selling. And then because they couldn't speak Spanish, the only thing that they could say in Spanish, and that's what she's telling in the story, is coming lady, or pase nomás señora. So they were just inviting people, or like the women that were coming to enter, and they were selling whatever they had. So the story of my family is built by textiles and air. Both materials were crucial for their survival. Textiles allowed them to survive economically, and air allowed them to tell their stories and remain in memory generation after generation. The relationship with textile began in Palestine, as I was mentioning, with them mending clothes, or with them having just like a day-to-day relationship with textile, was brought over by the woman of the family, so mainly by La Vive and Sofia. And that was what allowed them to move forward in a country where they didn't even speak the language. It is still the material that sustains my family business today, and air is what allowed them to tell their stories and keep their place of origin alive through generations, even though Chile and Palestine are more than, I think, 13,000 kilometers apart. So, as I was mentioning before, air represents the oral tradition that helps them resist to continue existing even as their territory is being erased or is trying to be erased, even as their people face an ongoing genocide. I'm gonna leave them here. I'm gonna leave them here. Here is the parachute. This object was made by my father and his brother, and it was sent by my brother who also works with them today. They still make parachutes, and they began learning and working when they were children, watching their aunt and father working with textile, making clothes, being always in relation with this material, and later also machine embroidery. That is what my grandfather did as a business. When I received the box with the parachute, I decided to create the first iteration of the performance where, along with another person, as you are seeing now in the video, referencing and embodying the two sisters, La Vive and Sofia, we unfolded the parachute following a set of instructions that we are telling by heart during the performance. Sorry. And the text is a mix of stories that La Vive told me combined with the instructions that my father and my brother gave me about folding and unfolding the parachute. This text is also written in a way that I centers on memory, so it's told like it's written as if somebody was remembering how to unfold the parachute. So that allows me like a little bit of space, or gave a little bit of space in the type of language to enter or to enter other types of stories, even fiction, but also the stories that La Vive was telling, no? So the two main elements in the performance are again air as the transmitters of stories, a channel of oral tradition, and the parachute, a textile that allows you to navigate the in-between with help of air. The light fabric allows what comes from there to land here softly, to keep floating and extend time in between. For me, this idea, this image was really clear around this object, where there was a space for the diasporic experience by not being there, right? And also not being here. So this in-between space was something that was really motivating also the type of movements in the performance. So I will, in this idea of the in-between, I wanted to also bring and read you a quote from Gloria Saldúa, who explores this idea through a specific word or concept that is called Nepantla. It says, and I now call it Nepantla, which is an Nahuatl word for the space between two bodies of water, the space between two worlds. It is a limited space, a space where you are not this or that, but where you are changing. You haven't gotten into the new identity yet and haven't left the old identity behind either. You are in a kind of transition, and that is what Nepantla stands for. It is very awkward, uncomfortable, and frustrating to be in the Nepantla because you are in the midst of transformation. So I'm also gonna leave this here and we go to the poem. So as I connect with these two materials or elements, I think of falling. I think of descent, but also of the capacity to ascend, to slow down what is destined to hit the ground and disappear. Personal stories are told in such a way that, like air, they are always changing and changing in relation with who is telling them, but also in relation with who receives them. But within them, there is a truth that passes through the generations. They can steal our land, but they cannot steal our air, and which will keep our words transmitted and spread like seeds that will then flourish. I wanted to share also with you this phrase that I think it was from Comandante Marcos, but it started like really going around in social media, and it says they wanted to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. The stories that we tell are the air that keeps us alive, and oral tradition holds the power to resist the colonial project of erasure. Today, I wanted to read you this poem. I'm gonna do it in Spanish. It's a mix of Altazor from Vicente Huidobro, Chilean poet. The English translation is by Cecilia Vicuña, that maybe some of you know. She's Chilean artist that also works a lot with textile, and I will really recommend also to look into her work and to her writing as well. And also parts of this I'm sorry, these texts are fragments of Caer Ascendiendo from the performance that you saw before. It says, cae, cae eternamente, cae al fondo del infinito, cae al fondo del tiempo, cae al fondo de ti mismo, cae lo más bajo que se pueda caer, cae sin vértigo, a través de todos los espacios y todas las edades, a través de todas las almas, de todos los anhelos y todos los naufragios. Cae y quema al pasar los astros y los mares, quema los ojos que te miran y los corazones que te aguardan, quema el viento con tu voz, el viento que se enreda en tu voz, y la noche que tiene frío en su gruta de huesos. Cae en infancia, cae en vejez, cae en lágrimas, cae en risas, cae en música sobre el universo, cae de tu cabeza a tus pies, cae de tus pies a tu cabeza, cae del mar a la fuente, cae el último abismo de silencio como el barco que se hunde apagando sus luces. Caer ascendiendo, caer hacia arriba, caer al revés, caer ascendiendo, caer hacia arriba, caer al revés. And I think because we still have time and we will not have questions in the end, I will share this last piece of the box with you that is called Los Malos. As I was telling before, Los Malos, my grandfather made business around the embroideries and the machine embroideries. After they were mending clothes by hand, then they decided to, together with a group of friends, start this business. So in this box where the parachute was coming, there were also a bunch of embroideries that had flaws on them that were mistaken. So all the embroideries that my grandparents and their siblings were not able to sell the ones that didn't make it to the market, no? So so what I did is that with this set of embroideries, I've been working with them, and I still am working with them. So I take them and I reproduce them in a big scale, trying to imitate the errors or mistakes. So los malos, they look like this. So for example, this is an original one, and you can see the mistakes. You can imagine also the mistakes, because I never access the ones that had no mistakes, no? So then that's also something that for me is really beautiful, that then the error is actually the portal that allows me to get to these objects. This is another one of the original ones. This is another one. Here you can see it's a clown without eyes. And this, for example, is a reproduction of one that I made. The scale is way bigger, so it is 85 per 70 centimeters. And it also has, I included in the embroidery the annotations that they did. So in each package, for example, in this one, there were like 5 bad ones. In Spanish, 5 malos. So malos means bad ones, but also kind of like, yeah, it's just the bad ones, no? So it has this other connotation as well. So here you could see like the original one and the reproduction. Here, zoom in to the original. Yeah, so with this last work that also came in the same box, I would like to finish the presentation for today. Again, thank you, Klara, for the invitation, and I really hope you all are motivated to apply to the biennial. I think it's a really great topic to explore different ways of like understanding air and in relation with textile, no? So yeah, I wish you the best luck, and hope to get questions if anyone has. You have my email and my contact, so you can of course do that. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful, very cool. That sounds promising. I also like this idea of, I don't know, the fact that like all of your projects somehow interlace with each other and are just like an ongoing, you know, investigation or exploration. And I think that's super. Oh, yeah, but thank you so much for presenting and sharing this in a part of your intimate journey with us. As you know, I'm a fan of your work, so thank you.